super excited to have some of the area members here. I'm going to ask them to start with, because I just want to kick on with it. There's so much we can discuss in this 45 minutes. But I do please ask anybody in the audience, if you've got any questions for these guys. We're really simply going to ask 3 questions. We're going to talk about the kind of key use cases and problems that are being solved using enterprise AR at the moment. We're going to talk about the benefits that's been received ecosystem, and then some of the challenges to try and deploy this technology as well. So, really excited to answer any questions, or we'll try and answer any of the questions that you can. So let's get on with introducing the panel. First, I'd like to hand over to Gary Smith of Welsh Water. Gary, if you could perhaps talk a little bit about yourself, how you got started in AR, and then some of the problems that you and your company is solving using AR.
Good morning, Mark. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Fantastic. I can't see myself, which is rather odd. I'd just like to say, Alex, this is more stressful than actually being there in Dublin. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Gary Smith. I'm Head of Asset Information for DAQRI Welsh Water. So we are the water and sewage undertaking for Wales in the UK. We're a fairly large business. We have 3.1 million customers, and we provide over 830 million litres of clean, wholesome drinking water every day to our 1.4 million homes. We also run the wastewater treatment works as well. We've got about 4,500 kilometres of coastline that we look after, and over 100,000 acres of land. And in a normal year, we would have over 1 million visitors to our outdoor activity recreation facilities as well. But obviously, we're all living in strange times at the moment. We're the 4th largest company in Wales, about 3,500 employees, and our investment portfolio is running currently at about £1.4 million a day into our operational assets. Very briefly then, our primary AR product is really designed to increase productivity and reduce error, and that's what we call the IWOM, so it's the Interactive Works Operational Manual, and it really presents critical safety and design information in a hostile environment. It allows us to deliver remote assistance and maintenance to our operators in very remote locations, often in, as I said, hostile environments, and drives error reduction. We can deliver induction, emergency process flows, and schematics to operators using this technology as well. We've done some work in the VR space as well, and we've return on investment has been proven there. We were primarily working in the AR space at the moment to enable us to make smart choices. And one of the new pieces of work we're doing at the moment currently with the team is around GPS guidance and point of interest mapping, trying to find hidden assets out there in the wilds of Wales. So really, that's us. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Gary. And just one real quick follow-on question is, when did you kind of start your AR journey? It'd be interesting to see.
About 6 years ago, probably. We've been through a number of iterations. We've failed a number of times. We've had some real considerable successes, but for us, it's been about the last 5 or 6 years.
So you've been at it a while. That's great. Thank you. Can I pass over to Paul, Mr. Sweeney?
I could listen to you, Gary, all day. It's a very interesting. I hadn't realised actually the breadth of activity that Welsh Water were involved in. My own introduction is far less interesting, I'm afraid. So similarly to Mark, I'm in AR probably about 6 years. So I think 2014, I actually became very aware of AR and made a conscious effort to get involved in it, and have been, thankfully, since then. As regards my professional capacity, I was the CEO of DAQRI. I think everybody knows at this point that we've sold DAQRI to a strategic buyer, and DAQRI is no more. And that finished up earlier this year. So currently I'm trying to do some of the things I love, so commercialization and use case consulting with ARVR and some other IoT technology. In DAQRI, what I did was grew the European presence. We had an office in Ireland, an office in the UK, and an office in Austria. I think that's my intro.
It's
Pass
okay,
it back.
Yeah, thank you. And I know, having worked with you for a number of years, you have a huge amount of experience in this kind of space. So be looking forward to picking out some of that knowledge in a second. So having gone from Wales and over to Dublin, we're now going to over to France and Paris. John, please introduce yourself, company, and some of the problems you're solving through Taqtile.
Yeah, happy to. First, can everyone hear me? Fantastic. Yeah, so John Mathieu, Managing Director of Taqtile Europe. We are headquartered in Seattle, Washington. A couple of us are actually ex-Microsoft, and we've been in the AR game since mid-2015, when Microsoft invited us to create software for the HoloLens before it actually shipped. And so we were one of 6 companies that were invited out of the thousands of ISVs that exist worldwide to get some software for launch. Our first product was HoloMaps, which is a 3D rendering of map and the ability to overlay data on top of that map. And then we started getting requests from customers around step-by-step instructions, training, things like that. And so we created Manifest. And Manifest has been in market for the last 2.5 years. And just, what day is today? The 7th. So I guess on the 5th of this month, we just introduced Manifest 2.0. It is a knowledge capture, knowledge share solution. And we're working with customers all over the world right now. And just super happy to join this panel.
Thank you, John. And just a quick introduction for myself. Alex has mentioned, my name is Mark Sage. I'm the Executive Director of the ARVR Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance. We're a global membership-funded, not-for-profit alliance helping to accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. And both John and Gary are members of the area, and Paul has been previously. So that's great, guys. Just to kind of summarize a little bit, I'm picking up on the use cases. Gary, you talked about remote assistance. John, you talked about kind of step-by-step guides and kind of training. The use cases you see, or is there anything else in the enterprise AR space that you see either happening now or you think is going to happen in the very near future? Maybe, John, if I start with you.
Sure. That's certainly where we're seeing the emphasis today in enterprise. And I think that is reflected through some of the work that Microsoft has done in terms of introducing some products in the remote assistance space and also guided instruction space. I think that for now, that is the killer app in enterprise. Where we think about where this will go in the future really depends a lot on the device hardware and the capabilities that those devices present to companies like Taqtile and others that are developing software for those platforms. I think that where we have looked at this space over the last year is really about kind of a time-honored statistic that people have used in terms of a retiring workforce. Skilled employees that have been in the job for 25, 30 years are now exiting, and younger folks coming in. I like to say, if you hand them a 250-page manual, they'll hand it right back to you because they grew up with an iPhone in their face. And so they're not exactly thrilled to transfer the written word into actual physical instruction. More recently, I think what we're seeing is a heavy emphasis on resiliency. I mean, we're all doing this from home. No one's going into the office. A lot of manufacturing plants have closed or are severely impacted. And this will not be the first time this is the first time this happens. It could very well happen again. And so we have pivoted our messaging along with many other companies to really focus on what can people do now to be prepared for this new world and take on solutions like those from Taqtile, those from our great colleagues in this space, so that we can create greater resiliency. To that end, I think this is where AR will continue to have the largest focus. Once we get through all of this, I think that we'll see a lot of innovation come through because we're all facing kind of a new world right now. So it's difficult to say, but certainly the killer app right now is about how do we empower people with the information that they need today to get the job done, and how do we actually share that information across a larger workforce.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think I'll come to you, Gary, because you're obviously living and breathing this and working from home and stuff like that. Have you seen, just to focus on the COVID-19 kind of issues we're having at the moment, is AR played a big part and your solutions played a big part in support?
Yeah, I think from a sort of tangible benefits point of view, it's the repeatability and the reduction in error, potential error making, that's crucial for us. Whereas we used to have maybe gangs or crews of 2 people going out to individual activities, very much now we're single operator on a site. So being able to deliver that complex information through some form of AR, whether it's on a tablet or a piece of wearable device, is definitely helping improve, for us, our customer service and help drive down those errors. It is strange. I would say there is a downside to working in this way, and it's I think we're finding the challenges around the lack of collaboration. I think that's the word I'd probably use, Mark. We've got some new exciting things ongoing at the moment, and it sort of feels as if we're in a little bit of a pause phase with those. But certainly in terms of tangible benefits related to COVID, remote assistance, support for operators out on the ground has been the key one for us. Okay,
thank you, Gary. Paul, I know you've gone through an amazing journey with kind of hardware and software kind of platforms, reflecting back to the industry and what are the kind of key use cases and what you're trying to deliver. Can you give us a little bit of insight of how that journey went and what kind of insights you were able to gather?
Okay, so the use cases, just listening to John and Gary, I mean, our first point of entry with our hardware plus software offering was normally the remote assistance, remote expert use case, because that was one where people could deploy relatively easily in terms of IT exercise and could actually see an ROI pretty much immediately. So it was the sort of low-hanging fruit where to start. And in fact, I thought of one of our customers recently. I had a contact from one of them. They deliver paper manufacturing plants all around the world. And around that time when supermarkets where there was pictures of people stockpiling toilet paper, it's these guys, machines around the world that were making all of that toilet paper, and they were extraordinarily busy. And there were pressure on all of their customer sites to have as maximum uptime, right? So they were also doing kind of what Gary was describing there, using the remote connectivity to diagnose and troubleshoot across continents and time zones, and try to keep the presses rolling. There was one use case that the guys didn't dwell on or didn't emphasize, where we actually in DAQRI times saw a lot of traction with our customers, and it was data visualization. So the remote connectivity part, starting point. From there, our customers typically either went to one of 2 next steps, which was either the instruction use case that John described, the step-by-step way of doing things, or the other one was typically what we used to call tag in our WorkSense suite. And Mark, you alluded to that. So tag allowed you to drop a tag geospatially. So for example, we had a case with Siemens making wind turbines up in Denmark, where they would carry out snagging on an asset by dropping virtual pins. And, they were located in 3D space rather than somebody with a notepad writing down a snag that they visually observed and trying to describe it. So that was the ability to drop a tag. Or the other flip side of that was a collaboration where we had it on the SAP stand at Hanover Show a few times, was where you can visualize data menus of process indicators of a manufacturing process. So bottles come in at the start, they get washed, they then get dried, they get labels put on them, they get filled, they get capped, and then they pass through. But each step of that has got process metrics, KPIs that you can normally visualize if you walk up to the HMI panel and interrogate the panel, press a few buttons. But we were able to actually float pretty much 2D menus in 3D space above the different parts of the machine and the process. And as you got nearer, they could enlarge, or you could select certain submenus and things. And that was very useful, that somebody could walk into a factory floor, have a look around, and just see that everything was green. Or if they saw something amber, they could walk down to that machine or that part of the factory floor, open up the amber warning light and learn a little bit more as to what was behind that, and then make a decision. So there were, it was a tool which facilitated a workflow of what the human was doing anyway, and that was gaining pretty strong traction, I would say, as well. You know, in addition to what the guys were saying.
Perfect. No, thank you for those insights, Paul. That's really great. So one of the great parts of my job is being able to speak to companies all around the world that are deploying, wanting to deploy AR, and then the providers of the AR solutions. But as you can imagine, it's a business world. So the one thing that we always talk about is what are the benefits? You know, what's that kind of return on investment? You know, there's no point being a great piece of technology for technology's sake. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about some of the benefits that you've seen or you want to measure, both the ones that you've kind of measured or planned for as you've done either your implementation or providing a service. But I really like some of those kind of intangible ones, some of the unexpected kind of benefits that you get from deploying AR. I'm going to perhaps, Gary, I know you've started to mention some of that. I'm going to come to you first if you can, just to kind of focus a little bit more on those benefits.
I'm on the spot today then, am I, Mark? So
yeah, come on.
I sort of,
we all get our chance.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, I mean, the benefits are difficult. I mean, you know, we're a business like any other business, so I need to make a business case for investment. But you know, from those tangible benefits that we touched on, I think that, you know, the key one for me is the repeatability of a task and our driven down error reduction. I mean, error reduction is actually quite difficult to measure because you start measuring failures when we've done something wrong, and then we're into root cause analysis. But we've got a general sense that we're better at doing what we're doing, and we can repeat those activities again and again through guided assistance with AR overlays as well. You know, we've got a very diverse telemetry estate. I mean, you know, Wales is a large country for us, not as big as some areas, as Mark you know has reminded me on a number of occasions, but it's geographically dispersed, and you know, we can sort of be there now with some of the technology as well. And I guess the other one for me, I think, John, you touched on the sort of workforce age ranges and things. We've got varied levels of operator experience, and these tools are a leveler really for us. The younger generation coming into the business now, absolutely, I think has been said, you know, they don't want a manual, they want a tablet with things provided to them, you know, that are easy for them to locate. And it really helps resolve our geographical challenges and our shift pattern limitations as well. The intangible ones, Mark, I think are probably they're a bit more difficult to identify, but I think one of the things we did realize that it's really given us or driven enthusiasm to do a bit more for the business. And in fact, the operators are using this tech are demanding more from us and the small team. And as a result of that, it's given us access to new technology. When we're not a technology business, you know, our primary business is providing clean drinking water to our customers. But it's given us access to that new technology. And I think as a result of that, you know, we've had, you know, we're quite proud of the awards that we've won. We've got a fairly small team. A quick shout out to Keris Middle and Ben Cale if they're listening in. But you know, we've got a fairly small team, but they're really dedicated, and that enthusiasm has given us a foot in the door with the board of the business. And they're very much solution driven. And as a result of that, we've been able to secure more investment into the program. So we've now got investment for the next 3 years to develop the projects we've got ongoing at the moment. So I guess those are an example of what I would consider the tangible and intangible benefits for the work we've been doing.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Gary. And I'm not seeing many questions coming up on the chat box. So either we're just talking between the four of us, or we've set everyone to
We never went live.
Yeah, never went live. So.
Hey, Mark, if I could jump in and just kind of add some thoughts to what Gary set the stage for. The things that we're seeing, the intangibles, really around job satisfaction. One of our key customers is King County wastewater treatment. So Gary, you and I should definitely compare notes after this. it's not a heavy technology industry. You know, a lot of these people are doing jobs that quite a few of us would say, no thanks. And what we're able to do with solutions like ours is give these workers agency. They are the ones that are deciding what are the best practices when they're creating the content. Tools like ours and others in the industry allow these folks who have had kind of an industry 4.0 message pushed down on them from the board, from management, and being asked to do more with less and faster time, and see themselves more as cogs in the wheel of an industrial transformation with what industry or industrial 4.0 practices push. When they pick up tools like ours, they are in charge. They have the opportunity to embrace this new technology that literally no one else in the world is doing right now, which is still a very small, exciting space, but it hasn't gone mainstream yet. And these workers, given the opportunity, can build something significant that changes the trajectory of their company, that empowers less skilled workers, that allows more experienced workers to kind of give back. We've seen a lot of folks that are 25, 30 years into their career become excited again about how they can, as kind of Jedi masters, hand it down to young Skywalkers and learn how to do things in the right way because of all their experience. And tools like ours and others allow them to capture those best practices in a new and innovative way that goes far beyond just, hey, you've been doing this for 20 years. Can you help write the update to the manual? No one wants to do that. And so I think it's tools like ours and others that again, make these jobs that much more exciting. And so those are the intangibles. I mean, I think, Gary, Paul, we've all been in these meetings where we've put the device on someone's head and they've been at the job for 30 years. And we've got this kind of fingers crossed moment where, like, are they going to like it? Or are they going to hate it? What's going to happen here? And, 99% of the time, it's like, wow, this is impressive. I can do major, major things with this. And so it's a great opportunity to kind of re-engage the employee, get them excited about what they're doing. And that just has huge benefits across entire workforces.
I think to add on to what John just said, the other intangible benefit, when you excite the workers and deliver a tool that has ROI, the other intangible is not the people who are on this call or in this conference, because we're all believers. It's those who aren't, right? And sometimes they're sitting in decision maker roles in organizations where they're skeptical, they have a long list of priorities, and their head is somewhere else. So the big intangible is if we deliver and do our job, then it convinces those people that this isn't just a new tech to be tinkered with, but it actually is something that delivers value now, and therefore is something that should be adopted along the lines of Welsh Water and many other companies that John is working with too. I think that big intangible is the existential challenge we all face, right? Because like I just know from a DAQRI experience, we carried the torch, we've passed it on now. So in a sense, our intangible contribution has been to just move things along. But in a sporting metaphor, it's like a rugby match where we're pushing a scrum inch by inch up the field. I know, Mark, that should get you excited. You're a passionate English rugby fan, but
we got the Welsh over here.
Yeah, I'm deliberately keeping it.
I have no comment.
Yeah, well, you're sitting in France, right? So they've got a rugby team too.
Well, true.
But it's hard yards that we're trying to make. So taking advantage of intangibles and proving as much as we can is certainly a challenge we all face together. I wanted to jump, since I've stolen the mic from everybody, I did want to jump back to, you mentioned planned and unplanned in your posing of the question, Mark. And it just reminds me sort of more of an anecdote, but it may be of interest. We had planned an extensive deployment, which we delivered and was successful and had tangible metrics as we planned it would. But there were a whole bunch of unplanned benefits that we hadn't. What we hadn't realized is that the guys who were carrying out the inspection task that we had implemented as an AR app for them, that they had to spend about 2 days writing a Word report afterwards, gathering their notes, sitting at a laptop. And generally they collaborated with 2 or 3 people from other shifts to make the report So they had to come together, organize time, sit at a laptop, import photographs from a digital camera, and do what, not like what John said, do a job that is kind of boring, right? It's not something that really would excite you. And they were delighted because our device automated that. When they had done their task, it was just already existing in a document which was waiting on their laptop for them. So it saved them about 15 hours of work, like 2-man days, which we just hadn't even thought about. But that was a massive benefit to them. And, you know, sometimes these little things generate huge excitement as well. You know, you're preoccupied with depth of field and perception and color contrast and all these sort of things when, you know, these guys are worried about having to sit at a laptop and write some boring report.
No, I think that's a great, again, some more great insights. One of the another lucky thing is I get to hear about the companies and the return on investment they get. And there are some great resources. In fact, you can come to the area and have a look at that. You know, anything up, I was doing a talk with Lockheed Martin. It was 99% saving on a particular process. And actually, Shelley from Lockheed said it was so difficult to convince the management that there was a 99% because it's such a big number. But they actually had those kind of savings. You know, Newport News Shipbuilding, who make big aircraft carriers, had a 96% saving. You know, doing a inspection down from 36 hours to 90 minutes. So, you know, there are some great stories out there, and that's why I'm keen to focus on the kind of benefits side. Also, you know, from the area perspective, we really want to help the ecosystem. So we've just recently launched, we have a research capability. We ask all the members what they want to research. Back in 2017, there was a need for an ROI calculator. We've created that. Some of our members have been using that, but actually we said, look, the whole ecosystem needs this kind of tool. So we've made it available online. You can go to the area website, have a look at the calculator. Feel free to try it, bring back any feedback, but we need to collect these good stories to be able to promote to that wider ecosystem, to get more people involved in delivering kind of AR solutions. So just to call out, you can either come to the booth or look at the area website, but that ROI calculator is now freely available to everybody. Great. Okay, guys, listen, we've got kind of about 15 minutes. So we've been talking about all the good stuff, but we know, and that's why we look so old, well, I do, about some of the challenges of deploying AR. Okay, so yeah, you know, it's not easy. The one thing I'm going to start with before I pass over to John is the one thing I always say to companies I'm speaking to, it's not a technology project, it's a change management project. There are kind of hearts and minds involved. So I'm not going to go into more detail because I'm going to pass over to John to kind of follow up with that and talk about some of the challenges that you've encountered with the companies you've been working with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, again, if we had this conversation 3 months ago, the challenges that I would have been experiencing, they might not be so prevalent today, given that, again, we're all living in this new world. But certainly the biggest challenge I think that we run into as a software company is the lack of power we have over the hardware. You know, I know that when we were developing for HoloLens 1, you know, we could have a great meeting. I used to say if I could get the head of training, a Jedi master from the front line, some internal champion, someone from IT just to kind of bless the project, and a purse holder, I could probably win that deal. As long as people weren't wearing the HoloLens for more than about 15 minutes at a time. Now that has been removed with great devices like HoloLens 2, Magic Leap, some others coming down the pipe. So I think that we're slowly but surely removing that barrier to entry in terms of comfort and wearability of devices. But I would still say it's a shiny new toy. You know, people are going to lean towards, if you can actually have them in a meeting, the amazing experience that they have. They all get it. But it seems like there still seems to be some sort of pushback around how it's interpreted as magic and not real when applying it to actual workforces. So our sales cycle is longer than I would like it to be. I think it's about average in terms of just getting everyone on board, understanding that this can drive real return on investment, can make a real difference in a workforce, and also help capture that knowledge, not only for training, but also for operations. I know Paul was talking earlier about showing IoT data and things like that. That's a key part of our product and our solution right now, so we can use it in operations. So it's more than just the training. It's really about how do we adopt this technology into the day-to-day life of these manufacturing customers. Again, I think that a lot of those challenges have been removed. I think we're all chomping at the bit to be able to travel again and actually get in front of customers and show them what we have. So I'm going to answer by saying I'm not quite sure what the challenges are just yet. It's a new world. Some of the classics will be there in terms of why should we spend money on this versus that. I think that argument gets a little bit easier for us to answer. And then with new innovations in device and device comfort, I think that we're going to see much higher adoption going forward.
Great. Thank you, John. Paul, let me pass over to you and some of the challenges.
So I echo much of what John said in terms of device, device maturity. I think in one sense, a lot of hardware vendors are trying to do everything in one device rather than perhaps looking at different devices for different use cases. I won't dwell on that point, but I do think there's, if you look at the success of RealWear, who've done a great job, they really looked at the use cases that they were focused on, and their device matches very well with those. They're not trying to be everything to everybody. And I think that's dealing with that, has been something where has been an area where other device manufacturers have taken a different approach that I think probably hasn't worked as well. The challenges for me, I'll try and answer it a little differently to John, since he's probably naturally answered a lot of things that I would have said. Philosophically, I think a lot of the excitement came into AR and VR from the technology promoter side. So everybody on that side is obviously high on the technology and excited about its possibilities because we're the promoters of the technology. So therefore, it was a push rather than a pull coming from customers who saw it naturally as a tool to use for things. So you're therefore trying to convert, a conversation where you've got a really excited tech fan trying to tone it down and get serious and talk industry, which might be a little bit boring if you're talking about, big machines or something, So you have, you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole a little bit. Whereas if I look at in aerospace, they've been using heads-up displays in fighter jets for 30 years. And they're, I worked in aerospace and defense for about 15 years. And, that sale doesn't happen as we've got a multi-plane perspective 5-color display that's got 5,000 lumens and it's going to look stereoscopic. We just say, here's a targeting device that will maintain accurate lock. And it's very easy to use. So you sell it by the solution rather than the wondrous tech that goes behind it. Because guess what? The pilot sitting in there doesn't actually care. They might be interested in the tech, and you'd hope that somebody flying an aircraft would be interested in the aircraft, but it's for them, that's not the sizzle. It's sizzle doesn't work. So in a sense, the challenge is, we've gone through the Gartner curve. We're now tanked somewhere down the bottom, coming up out of it, and COVID has thrown a few banana skins in front of us. And as John said, who knows what challenges come next? But in a sense, we've created our own challenge to kind of, we've positioned it in a certain way that's a lot of sizzle, and in a sense, we owe it to ourselves to actually whittle that away somewhat into a more focused presentation to customers, and that's it's very doable, but it's something that I think is taking all of us a long time to actually move towards.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I think so. A couple of comments on that. The hype that the industry's had and still has to a certain extent is something we've all had to live with, and that's one thing to our kind of thought leadership that we're trying to say, hey guys, there's some real benefits, but it needs some work to successfully deploy. So I would say that just cool. The Gartner one, AR is now out. 2019, we're out of the emerging technology one, which is cool. That's not to say that everything's hunky-dory, but it's been a bit of a journey there. I think what's really interesting, I'm going to come to Gary in a second. From a provider perspective, there is, you've both talked about some of the kind of technologies supporting AR. What I find in speaking to the companies deploying it, there are actually a whole bunch of that need to be thought about and deployed. So, Gary, I'm going to let you go a little bit on that, and then maybe between us we can talk about what we've been doing in the area and looking at all the kind of different business challenges that need to be overcome. So if I leave you to talk a little bit about that, and I can chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as far as John and Paul are concerned, I absolutely agree with everything they said around the devices. But as an end user now, I think we've got a whole host of new challenges which have evolved as we've started to implement our AR projects on operational sites. And I guess the safety considerations, Mark, that we may want to come back to, but if I focus on the ones which are primary for us at the moment are around our legitimate security concerns. So that's information security concerns as opposed to physical security. So we're now starting to deal with some complex, high-risk data elements, and we're sharing those with the devices. We've got challenges around intellectual property and data capture. We're generating user-generated content, and we've got questions now around the copyright associated with that content. And for us in the UK, the implementation of one of the primary directives into the General Data Protection GDPR regulations really has caused us some considerable head scratching, I guess, around how we gain informed consent where we're using AR devices in public areas. So if you imagine operators working on, public highway, outside a shopping center or whatever it may be, and we're live stream filming back to control rooms, we need to address those concerns around that content, GDPR consent and security, and that's something that we're going to be focusing on over the next year or 18 months as we move into the next iteration of our project. The other issue for us, I guess, in terms of practical challenges on operational assets is the overwhelming belief that the technology is right and the positioning of the AR overlay. Paul, I think you touched on RealWear HMT. So the HMT is one of the devices we use, and it delivers exactly what we need. We do use other devices as well, but that AR overlay for us is in the right position. Some of the other devices we've tried didn't actually do that for us. So that idea about conflicting instructions and the AR overlay is crucial. And I guess the last one for me is trying to work with multiple delivery platforms, whether it's iOS, Windows, Android platforms. As a non-technology company, trying to deliver our products into multiple devices has been challenging. I think the industrial hardware had paused. We're very pleased with our HoloLens 2. One of my colleagues, Ben, is exploiting that as we speak. He's in lockdown. I'm sure he's probably doing some gaming with his kids on the HL2, but it's a great device. And for us in Wales, that connectivity is still a challenge. So I think 5G may help improve connectivity. But yeah, those are some of the end user challenges, I think, Mark, which are probably not device specific.
Yeah, that's great. And
yeah, if I could just add to that really quick, I think you mentioned 5G at the tail end. Multi-edge compute, I think, is also coming on pretty strong. That's going to provide a fantastic opportunity to answer some of those security concerns. The ability to slice the network up into only accessing bits that are secure and only exposing areas that need to be, I think will absolutely be a game changer for solutions like ours and others. We made a choice about a year ago to become MEC compliant, and we've been partnered with Microsoft on that ever since. And so as we start talking to more and more manufacturers, they are becoming more aware of what digital twins are all about and how they want to make those exposed to their workers, but how they can do that in a safe and secure way so that they're not releasing their IP into the cloud. So I think mech solutions or solutions like Manifest that can run in mech and others that can run in mech will start answering a lot of those concerns. And again, with the connectivity, the low latency, the ability to provide video chat and everything else in a really secure way, hopefully together as a group, all of us can take advantage of some of these new technologies and answer a lot of the concerns that are popping up right now.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, John. And it's really interesting to hear the different viewpoints and challenges. One of the great things about the area is we're able to bring those kind of the providers, the implementers, the people who are deploying AR and some of the kind of research bits to really learn and network and understand the challenges. I do want to pick a question from the audience. Nigel has asked a really interesting one. What does the panel think about clients who are asking of that overlapping in tech like IoT and AI? I think it's a really interesting bit. You guys know we've done a piece of research, so it's something that the area members have said they're really interested in. We've done a big piece on, what the kind of benefits, what the challenges are, what organizations need to do to implement this. We also, before I hand it over, had a really interesting webinar last night my time, about a company that's really using AR and AI to help workers and get the right information, the kind of contextual and relevant information at the right time. So maybe, Paul, I can just ask you on that kind of IoT and AI piece, and we can go around everybody.
Yeah, so the IoT one for me was probably more commonly discussed than the AI plus AR one, just from my own experience of it. And particularly in the visualization of data. Many machines in a factory today come sensorized, so they're capable of measuring their own performance at various points. And we were, they were feeding into some type of an MES system or an automation system. And typically we were tapping into that and visualizing. So that scenario was very common, in fact, nearly ubiquitous for us. There were cases then, more to what Gary was speaking about, of perhaps a utility company where there's a transformer station on a rural side of a hill somewhere where they install an IoT system to measure parameters and transmit that, and where we would access a network where that data was available and visualize it. So they were very common conversations and use cases. And I think, the IoTs are useful because you can buy a sensor for $50 with 3 years of battery inside it, stick it onto a motor, and you can get a full spectrum of vibration frequency data off that. So very easy to deploy, right? The AI one was a little more tricky. I would say many of the conversations we would have had were people saying, can you learn patterns? So can you see what the expert worker is doing and from that characterize their actions and then make your work instruction from that? Can you, use AI to see patterns of how long it normally takes to do a task? So there were some exploratory discussions and ideas, some ideas about efficiency as well. Obviously, AI has been used. AI and deep learning are being used on the IoT level to try and look for patterns in pathologies, things that tend to go wrong in systems before the machine breaks down. So some of that flowed into questions to us because we were a headset manufacturer. People were saying, well, if you spot something, perhaps even inadvertently from a camera, can you feed that in and use an AI to try and to correlate the incidence of what you saw to perhaps a machine down incident that happened subsequently. So there were some of the conversations we would have had. I think IoT was definitely something tangible and real and deployable now. The AI ones are a little bit more blue sky, typically for us, at least. That's my own experience of it.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
I could jump in with some of our thoughts, or I don't know, Gary, did you want to say anything? No, okay. Certainly as we think about incorporating newer technologies, we're laser focused on what we produce today and looking to leverage some of the services that are coming out of the cloud from companies like Microsoft and Amazon. They have a lot of machine learning, AI offerings that we can incorporate into what we're doing through an open set of APIs on our back end, so that we can start building around, to Paul's point, predictive maintenance. And so that, from that sensor data, we can glean certain components or certain events that would lead one to believe that, hey, this machine needs to get looked at. We're thinking about how that predictive maintenance actually works into job assignments. We'd also like to incorporate how, efficiently people are doing or completing the jobs with our software, so that we have the ability to kind of figure out a good, better, best choice of person to be assigned a problem in a predictive maintenance way, so that they would be, when they show up to work in the morning, fire up Manifest and see what their day is going to look like. So I think that together with sensor data, predictive maintenance, the AI offerings from Microsoft and others in the cloud, these are all things that we're incorporating into our solution. I'm sure our esteemed colleagues are doing the same, because it just makes sense. So we're super excited about what is coming down the pipe, and as it pertains to 5G and MEC, doing it in a secure and efficient way to drive the greatest productivity is really our goal.
Perfect. Thank you, John. So Gary, we are kind of at the end of time. I am going to ask you one very blunt question. Are you using IoT?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, no. We have a very strong data science team. We do a lot of work around the predictive analytics space, particularly in terms of BAQRI failures in things like service reservoirs and how often we clean trunk mains, large diameter mains, and sewer flooding, sewer flushing to try and prevent sewer flooding. So yeah, a lot of predictive analysis around that. And the IoT, I mean, I think our telemetry estate stitches the whole business together, and all of the bits of equipment talk to each other and help us with our predictive maintenance rather than just doing routine maintenance. We're being very smart around how we do maintenance now, whether we run to almost failure or run to failure with backup systems, or whether or not we're just doing in situ analysis in terms of vibration or heat sensors, and then just doing maintenance just in time in those situations. But yeah, IoT around telemetry, predictive analytics is a strong area that we focus on at the moment.
Perfect. Well, guys, I think we ought to wrap up there. We've already taken 5 minutes extra and 5 minutes people's coffee break. Thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for your work in the area. I'm going to hand back over to Alex. If anyone's got any questions, they can.